Africa goes nuclear, how Rwanda and Burkina Faso just changed everything. For centuries, Africa's wealth was extracted, shipped away, and turned into power, not for its people, but for foreign empires. From Kinshasa to Kaya, Lagos to Lubumbashi, millions sleep without light, schools operate without electricity, hospitals run on fumes. Why? Because those who claimed to bring civilization stole not only our land, but our power, quite literally. Uranium from Niger fueled France's reactors. Cobalt from Congo charged Western industries. Oil from Angola filled European tanks. But Africa? We were told to wait for aid, to wait for approval, to wait for permission. But the waiting is over. In a groundbreaking move that shook diplomatic rooms from Brussels to Washington, two bold nations, Rwanda and Burkina Faso, have done the unthinkable. They have signed a nuclear cooperation deal. Not for bombs, but for energy, sovereignty, survival. This isn't just about power plants, it's about power itself, about Africans reclaiming what is theirs, about flipping the switch on exploitation, on dependency, on silence. It's about a continent standing tall and saying, we will no longer beg to be powered, we will power ourselves. This is the story of a continent rising, and this is how the atom turned African. Before we dive deeper, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single step in Africa's new energy revolution. Like, comment, and share this video with your community. Let the world know, the atom now belongs to Africa. Now let's begin the journey, the darkness they left us in. Picture this: a continent with 40% of the world's natural resources, over 20% of global uranium reserves, enough sunshine to power the Earth twice over. And yet, more than 600 million Africans live without reliable electricity. It's no accident. During colonization, energy infrastructure wasn't built for Africans, it was built for extraction. Roads went from mines to ports. Power lines went to factories that packed resources for export. While Europe built reactors, Africa received rationed current, if any. France built 56 nuclear reactors, and the uranium that powers them, 80% of it came from Niger. Congo gave the world uranium for the Manhattan Project, which created the first nuclear bomb. But Congolese homes? They went dark at 6 p.m. And when Africa dared to rise, when Sankara spoke of self-reliance, when Lumumba called for industrial sovereignty, they were silenced. Africa's power was never meant for Africa. That was the design. But designs can be rewritten. Chapter 2: The Deal That Shook Empires. On July 4, 2025, amid the green hills of Kigali and the fire-forged resilience of Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso and Rwanda turned a page in African history. They signed a strategic nuclear partnership. Rwanda, already collaborating with Rosatom to develop Africa's first small modular reactor, opened its doors to Burkina Faso, not just in solidarity, but in shared ambition. The deal covers joint research and development, training programs for nuclear engineers and scientists, cooperation on medical isotopes for cancer treatment, shared infrastructure planning for future reactors, Pan-African energy regulation frameworks outside Western influence. Why is this huge? Because it breaks the dependency model. It doesn't involve the World Bank. It doesn't involve France. It doesn't require IMF approval. It's African minds planning African futures with African solutions. The fear in Western media is palpable. Suddenly, the narrative of a helpless Africa is crumbling. They're not just watching Africa rise, they're watching control slip from their hands. The spirit of Sankara meets the vision of Kagame. This moment isn't random. It was written in the fire of revolution. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré came to power in Burkina Faso, he spoke of a new generation, a generation that would no longer kneel. He invoked the spirit of Thomas Sankara, the man who planted trees, built schools, banned imperialist aid, and dared to say, "He who feeds you controls you." Today, Traoré is finishing that sentence. He who powers you owns you. So we will power ourselves. In Rwanda, Paul Kagame is known not just as a president, but as a strategist. From ashes of genocide, he built one of Africa's most advanced digital nations. He brought fiber optic cables to every district, drones for medical delivery, and turned Rwanda into a hub of innovation. Now, he's going nuclear with a plan. By 2030, Rwanda wants to eliminate all energy imports. To do that, they need sustainable, reliable, high-output power. Nuclear checks every box. The two leaders, one from the Sahel's dusty plains, the other from Central Africa's Emerald Hills, represent two faces of the same African uprising. One is the revolutionary, the other the reformer. And together they are architects of a new continental future. This nuclear alliance is more than political. It's symbolic. It says, we are done waiting for Africa to be ready. We are ready now. We are capable. We are building. Why nuclear? Why now? The world hears the word nuclear and imagines weapons. But in Africa, nuclear means something different. It means life. A single small modular reactor, SMR, can provide uninterrupted electricity to over 500,000 people. It can power water treatment plants, tech cities, modern hospitals, and agro-industrial zones. SMRs are cost-effective, require less land, and are adaptable for rural Africa, where large grids don't reach. Nuclear medicine saves lives every day in Europe, so why shouldn't a mother in Uahiguya have access to the same cancer treatment? Why should African farmers lose 40% of their crops due to post-harvest losses caused by lack of cold storage, when stable nuclear-powered refrigeration could solve that? We're told to wait for solar and wind. But those are good only when the sun shines or the wind blows. Nuclear is stable, 24/7 power. And if France, with no uranium of its own, runs 70% of its electricity on nuclear, then Africa, rich in uranium, has no excuse to stay in the dark. The West fears our nuclear awakening, not because of bombs, but because of freedom. When African nations produce their own energy, they stop needing foreign loans. When energy is sovereign, policies become sovereign. We won't have to sell off our futures for megawatts. We won't be forced into IMF reforms just to keep the lights on. Rwanda and Burkina Faso understand this. That's why they've chosen the atom, not to destroy, but to liberate. If you believe Africa should no longer beg for energy, if you believe our children deserve 24-hour power, not 24-hour struggle, hit that like button and drop a comment with your country's flag. Tell the world Africa is switching on her future, and no one can unplug it. Now let's move deeper into the story, because what comes next will shake the empire to its core. Empire watches, nervous. Behind closed doors in Washington, Paris, and Brussels, there's panic. Because this nuclear partnership between Rwanda and Burkina Faso is not just a science story, it's a signal. A signal that the old script is being burned. The colonial powers preferred an Africa of buyers, not builders. Of dependents, not designers. For them, Africa was a gas station, a mine, a market, but never a manufacturer. Now that narrative is collapsing. And with it, their grip on Africa's policies, pricing, and priorities. Already, international analysts are sounding alarms. Can African countries manage nuclear safely? Are their governments stable enough for atomic energy? Shouldn't they stick to solar and leave the reactors to us? These questions reek of arrogance. Where were these concerns when French companies dumped radioactive waste in the Sahara during nuclear tests? Where were the critics when uranium workers in Nigeria died from unprotected exposure while Arriva's profits soared in Paris? Suddenly, when Africans control the atom for themselves, the same voices scream danger. But we know the real threat isn't radiation, it's revolution. Because once African countries master nuclear energy, they don't just gain electricity, they gain independence. Independence from European energy markets, independence from donor-driven development, independence from global gatekeepers who've always told us, you are not ready. But now, two African nations have said, watch us. The young scientists of tomorrow. Revolution is not just in speeches, it lives in labs, classrooms, and training centers. That's why this deal matters so much. It's not just about reactors, it's about capacity building. Rwanda's Nuclear Energy Board is already collaborating with institutions like the Moscow Engineering Physics Institute and the IAEA. Young Rwandans are studying abroad, but now they'll begin training Burkinabe youth too. Picture this, a boy from Fadan Gurma earns a nuclear physics scholarship and returns to build Burkina's first radiology research lab. A girl from Kudugu masters energy policy and sits at the table to draft Sahel-wide reactor safety codes. A Pan-African tech park emerges in Kigali where Rwandans, Malians, Guineans, and Ethiopians collaborate on clean atomic solutions. This isn't fantasy, it's already forming. These young minds will do what colonizers feared most: think freely, build boldly, stay home. Because a future where Africa keeps its talent, its minerals, its energy, and its dignity is the empire's greatest nightmare. Traoré and Kagame know this, and that's why they're not just investing in kilowatts, they're investing in Africans. From uranium chains to energy freedom. Let us not forget, uranium has a bitter taste in Africa. It was extracted from our lands with blood-stained contracts, carried across the desert under armed guard, and processed abroad, far from the villages it was taken from. We were left with poisoned water, sick miners, and empty promises. But now, uranium is returning to its rightful owners, not as a curse, but as a key to freedom. The nuclear partnership between Rwanda and Burkina Faso is a liberation act. It reclaims the atom for the benefit of the people, not private firms. The same way Sankara reclaimed land for farmers, these leaders are reclaiming energy for nations. Not just to light homes, but to light minds, industries, and movements. Because when you control your energy, you control your destiny. No more waiting for France to adjust tariffs. No more depending on US aid to power maternity wards. No more begging for megawatts while our uranium is shipped out by the ton. Rwanda and Burkina Faso are not alone. They are the spark. Niger, Mali, Guinea, Congo, others will join. A Pan-African nuclear alliance is no longer a dream. It is emerging. Africa will light her own future. Africa is done waiting. She is rising with fire in her soul and uranium in her soil. What Rwanda and Burkina Faso have done is declare war on dependency. Not with guns, but with grids, gigawatts, and generations of engineers. They've turned the atom into an instrument of hope. And in doing so, they've reawakened the voices of our giants. Africa must unite. Component placement. Kwame Nkrumah. Dare to invent the future. Component placement. Thomas Sankara. We are not alone. Africa will write her own history. Zrenya Patrice Lumumba. That future is here, and when the history of this century is written, it won't just say that Africa had uranium. It will say Africa used it. Africa owned it. Africa lit her own path. And that changed everything. You've been watching Pan-African Hub. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Subscribe for more bold African stories. Like this video to boost the signal. Drop your country's flag and comment below. Let Africa control the atom. And remember, this is not just content. It's a call to consciousness. The revolution is being televised.